quiet today.
Where is everyone?
Up north. Up north. Bobby Schatzman's recovering from a procedure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And Bob Price's wife fell down and broke her leg or something.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that either.
Oh, God.
They can't get a break.
Did you know Rabbi Weinblatt's retiring?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Pretty amazing. Must be nice.
So I friended
Test. Hi at home? If there's anybody watching? I hope so, because not many people here. Hey, Art. Good Shabbos. How are you? All right. Okay, here we go. Good to see you. We've weeded out the carpetbaggers, I guess. So here we go. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריתו ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם בין ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם פרי הגפן אמן לחיים. All right. We'll move on without Bobby's jokes. Blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, so, there were only supposed to be 4 books of the Torah. But because of the sin of the spies, which we'll have next week in Shalach Lecha, they ended up wandering for 40 years, and so that created a new book called In the Wilderness. But, there are a lot of people in our community who think, that the Torah is the way it was supposed to be, because they go away for the book of Numbers. Right, they're gone. So they don't know. They think that we got the Torah and we went to Israel and there's Deuteronomy and Moses prepares us for going to the land of Israel and we go into the land of Israel. But they don't know that there was that 40-year wandering point with the whole sin, and they only know 4 books of the Torah because for Numbers they're in the Berkshires. And God knows what kind of Torah study they have up there. I don't know who's teaching in the Berkshires, but no, actually they have some good stuff up there. But it's a problem. Now, to miss today's class would be catastrophic. Because I'm about to show you probably something you've never even imagined. How fascinating this Torah portion, which is called Bahalotecha, how fascinating this Torah portion is. I never would have known this either. But there's a rabbi who I quote often named Rabbi Ari Khan, who was one of the youngest students of Rabbi Soloveitchik and one of the leading teachers of the Soloveitchik way of studying Torah. So what you're about to see is something so brilliant that you're probably going to be blown away, and you're probably going to say, Was this Torah portion always here? Was that always there? Or is this like added in recently? That's how cool I think you're going to think this is. So I want to start with chapter 9, which is the book of Numbers, Numbers chapter 9, verse 1. And the Torah portion begins with chapter 8. Chapter 8 is not that exciting. It talks about Aaron's role lighting the lamps, which is important, and it has to do with a little bit of a continuation of what happened last week. But chapter 9 now is going to begin setting up the greatest sin of the Torah, which is the sin of the spies. Remember the sin of the golden calf, the Jews recover from that. The ringleaders don't. The ringleaders die. But the rest of them are still going to Israel. There's not going to be wandering in the desert for 40 years because of the sin of the golden calf. For the sin of the golden calf, they're forgiven and they're going to Israel. But the sin of the spies results in you're going to wander for 40 years and you're all going to die in the wilderness, and that I can't forgive. And so if you're not a Zionist, you have to answer the question, why was God able to forgive a sin against himself, but not a sin against the land of Israel? That's something he couldn't abide by, right? So let's get into it. Chapter 9, Bill, will you... Here, let me give you this. Chapter 9, verse 1, book of Numbers. Here we go.
The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai on the first new moon of the second year following the Exodus from the land of Egypt, saying, Let the Israelite people offer the Passover sacrifice at its set time. You shall offer it on the 14th day of the month of the 14th day of this month at twilight, at its set time. You shall offer it in accordance with all the rules and rites.
Okay, so far all we've learned is Jews need to celebrate Passover every year. And back then, what that meant was offer the Paschal offering. So every year when you get to the 15th of Nisan, Jews have to offer the sacrifice. That's what we have so far. Verse 4.
Moses instructed the Israelites to offer the Passover sacrifice. And they offered the Passover sacrifice in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses, so the Israelites did.
Okay, now here's the problem. Verse 6.
But there were some men who were unclean by reason of a corpse and could not offer the Passover sacrifice on that day. Appearing that same day before Moses and Aaron, those men said to them, "Unclean though we are by reason of a corpse, why must we be debarred from presenting the Lord's offerings at its set time with the rest of the Israelites?" Moses said to them...
Okay, so let's stop there. So here's what happened. The Talmud tells you why these guys are impure. Anybody remember? We've been through this. Very good. Carrying? Close? Joseph. Joshua would have been upset about that, considering he was still alive. Right, yeah, okay. But there's a lot of jokes there. You're taking my thunder. So, remember when they left Egypt? They took the coffin of Joseph with them. So there were a few Levites whose job it was to schlep Joseph's coffin wherever they went. And if you're touching a coffin, you're impure from the impurity of death. And so you're not able to offer the Paschal sacrifice. So they said, it's not fair. We're doing a mitzvah, which now precludes us from doing another mitzvah. Doesn't seem right. Moses says, you're right, but I don't know what to do. Let me ask God. God comes back and says, tell them not camp for a month, leave the thing for a month. We'll do the thing with the red heifer. We'll get them pure. And in a month, they'll come and offer their sacrifice, which is what today we call Pesach Sheni. And what you're supposed to do 1 month after Passover is on that day, the 15th of Sivan, the next month, you're supposed to eat a piece of matzah. And that's what we do to this day. It's a custom. You don't have to do it. But if you want to, you can eat a piece of matzah, which symbolizes this is Pesach Sheni. Now, there's a clue in verse 7. Why do these people care so much? You know, sometimes when you get out of a mitzvah, you're like, oh, that's great. I thought I had to do that, but now, for whatever reason, I don't have to do that. Sometimes it's really annoying. For example, let's say you're sitting Shiva, and you lose a family member 2 days before Passover. We had this actually a couple weeks ago, because people passed away just a couple days before Shavuot. When a major holiday starts, it interrupts and ends Shiva. So let's say you're sitting 7 days of Shiva, but your loved one died 2 days before Shavuot, you're only allowed to sit 1 day of Shiva. And that's cruel. It's not my favorite rule, but it's a rule. The holidays interrupt Shiva. And so the family is supposed to be sitting Shiva, and then they're not allowed to. Now, some people say, you know, we were only going to do 3 days anyway. We're Reform. We do 2 days. You know, we can't take any more bagel emporium platters. We have more bagels than we could ever, you know, feed an army with. Whatever. But these people are saying, we wanted to do that mitzvah, and now we can't. But verse 7 tells you something very interesting. So if you look at verse 7, it tells you why they want to do it. So, and it's much more powerful in Hebrew, which is like a thing rabbis say when they want to sound smart, but it just is, for the last 3 words. What's Farber complaining about? You couldn't hear her. We couldn't either. Oh, give me a break. She said, you don't need it. You don't need it. If you're at home, you don't need it. Okay. It was a joke. She said the bones of Joshua. I said, no, the bones of Joseph. There were some jokes there. You missed it. Okay. Those men said to him, we are impure through a human corpse. Why should we be left out by not offering God's offering in its appointed time? And then it says the last three words, betoch b'nei Yisrael. So what it says is, it's not fair that we can't do this offering to God in its appointed time. That's the mitzvah. But then the Torah adds three words, betoch b'nei Yisrael. We can't do it among the children of Israel. Which means that socially we're left out. We don't get to go to the party. We're not invited to the seders. Because you can't go to a seder if you're not there to eat the meat. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is eating the meat of the Paschal lamb. So, today if you go to a seder and you don't eat a piece of meat, you haven't fulfilled the seder. Will I still let you in my house? Yeah, I'm Reformed. But if you're a vegetarian, you have a problem. It's the one time you're supposed to eat meat. Although there's another mitzvah that says if you can't fulfill a mitzvah, then you don't have to. If you're unable to actually do the mitzvah, then okay. So, but they're saying here we want to be part of the community. So I'm asking the question: are they interested in the holiness aspect of Judaism, or are they interested in the social aspect of being part of the Jewish people? Social. Maybe. And do you see how that speaks to us today? I'm a cultural Jew. I'm a cultural Jew. Cultural Jew means that I play golf on Saturdays and I can't get here at 9 a.m. because I golf. Right. Could be. Question is, could it be both? The answer is yes. Yeah, maybe. Here, can you?
In my reading in stone, it doesn't say left out. It says diminished. There's a difference between diminished and left out. Diminished means that maybe something is wrong with you, that you don't have that spirituality is diminished versus left out.
Okay.
Could be both.
So, just look at the Hebrew there. Those men said, we are impure. Why should we be left out? Lama nigara. Yeah, nigara, that word means like to subtract. In modern Hebrew, it means subtracting. So it makes sense. Richard? Okay. All right, let's keep... I just want to show you one commentary, the Sforno, 16th century Italy. Actually, I want to look at three different commentators on Numbers 9:7. The Sforno says, seeing that the ritual impurity we have incurred was incurred in the process of our fulfilling a positive commandment, why should the result of this be the misdemeanor of not fulfilling? Okay, so we already covered that. That's what the Sforno said. The Chizkuni said, basically what he's saying is, it's not fair. We were doing one mitzvah. Why should we not be able to do the other mitzvah? The Chizkuni, 1200s France, says, why are we not allowed to eat holy things while in the state of ritual impurity, seeing that last year when we were in Egypt, we were also in the state of ritual impurity? The reason is that at the time we had not been warned to do so, right? Because that was before the Torah was given and we didn't know that rule. And the rules were different because that rule that you're not allowed to eat it in a state of ritual impurity, that rule didn't exist yet because the Torah hadn't been given. But now you got the Torah that had a rule that said, don't do that. So that's Chizkuni's answer. And the Kli Yakar, after they had heard the expression in its time, they said, why should we be disbarred from the community? So the Kli Yakar is the one who's coming to say, are they asking this because they're concerned about being left out socially? Or is it that they're concerned about missing out on the holiness? And the reason why that matters, we could extrapolate a whole lot of things to talk about, Judaism today, and that could be a very interesting conversation. But the reason why that matters here is because what the Kli Yakar and others are asking is, do they really care about doing the mitzvah for the holiness of it? Or is that secondary, and they just care more about being part of the group? And so what he's really asking is, does the holiness aspect really even matter to them or not? Can we pass the mic? I would never.
I think it's probably both. Because if you're able to attend and you're able to give the sacrifice and it's time, you're able to be with the community so nobody looks at you like, oh, there's something wrong. Whereas if you're kept out, everybody is automatically looking at you like, oh, well, there's something wrong with you.
Interesting. It could be. Yeah, it could be.
So
So as of right now, we're just posing the question. And that's more way of doing so. Okay. Yeah, please. Can you take them?
Were there before any other instances in which they were unable to fulfill another mitzvah that they were supposed to, but they were impure, but this was not like a public or a collective mitzvah that people would realize? And
Right.
that may
So
let-
that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Because there are other things maybe they couldn't do. Very good point. But the Paschal offering was communal.
that would show whether...
Yeah, very good point. I hadn't thought of that. Very good point. Ed?
Yeah, and
popular
isn't the point of the communal mitzvah to create a holy community? So I don't know that there is any
Okay.
contradiction.
Fair point. Fair point. Carol, did you want to?
Oh, I have to think about what I was going to say, but
Oh.
with all the comments, I do believe that is their intent, that is their heart. But sometimes it's a little bit difficult to keep that up, the intent of being pure and holy and what the heart desires with the competing aspect of the social environment, and I think that's where we fall sometimes.
Okay. So let me tell you why I bring this up. I think it's going to set up a theme for the rest of the portion. Not so much having to do, well, I think it's going to set up a theme that's going to run through the rest of the portion. And I'm not so concerned now about the social versus, are they in it for social reasons? Or are they in it for the holiness reasons? I'm not so concerned about that. As we go forward now, what I want to set up is some more issues of questioning the holiness. All right. So as we go forward, you'll see kind of what I'm getting at. But I use this story. The Torah portion uses this story to set it up. And I just want to point out that when they are ritually impure and everyone else is, offering the sacrifice, they're separated from the rest of the camp. And that's going to come into, that idea of being separated from the rest of the camp is going to come into play as we go forward in the rest of the portion. So today, what I want to do, I don't usually do this, but I want to look through different parts of the whole portion to kind of put this together. So let me just summarize what we're going to skip. There's a section of chapter 10 talks about how the Jewish people move and where they camp and where they how there's a cloud that follows or leads them around, and they blow trumpets so everyone knows when to move, and there's some just information about how they camp. And then I want to skip now to chapter 10 verse 29. Chapter 10, verse 29. An old friend comes back. An old friend comes back. But he's got a different name. Okay. Who's got a mic? Anyone have a mic? Ed, would you mind reading, since you have a mic? Chapter 10 of Numbers, verse 29.
Moses said to Hobab, son of Reuel the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, "We are setting out for the place of which the Lord has said, I will give it to you.
Right.
Come with us."
Hobab was one of the southerners of the Torah. His first name was actually Billy. He was actually Billy Hobab. But he was just from a southern tribe. Okay. So Chovav Comes from the word chovav, like chibat Zion or chovavei Torah. Chovav means a lover of. And Rashi will tell you, just like the Talmud, he's the son of Ruel, the Midianite, the father-in-law of Moses, which means that this is Jethro. Because Jethro is also a Midianite, he's also the son of Ruel, and he's also the father-in-law of Moses. Moses only had one father-in-law. So Chovav is a nickname for Jethro. Jethro had 7 nicknames. And the Talmud explains why. That's a whole different class. But Jethro now comes back. Jethro now comes back. Okay. And let's see what happens. Very interesting conversation. Ed?
Come with us, and we will be generous with you, for the Lord has promised to be generous to Israel. I will not go, he replied to him, but will return to my native land. He said, please do not leave us, inasmuch as you know where we should camp in the wilderness and can be our guide. So if you come with us, we will extend to you the same bounty that the Lord grants us. Okay?
Yeah, a little bit more.
They marched from the mountains of the Lord a distance of 3 days. The ark of the covenant of the Lord traveled in front of them on that 3 days' journey to seek out a resting place for them, and the Lord's cloud kept above them by day as they moved on from camp.
Okay. Now, this is example number 2 of someone going in the opposite direction of holiness. Now, halachically, why does Yitro not want to go to Israel? Because he's a convert. Because he's a convert, he's not from any particular tribe. Because he's not from any particular tribe, he's not going to inherit any land in Israel. Whereas Moses tells him, don't worry, you'll get some land. And by the way, if you look in chapter 1 of the book of Judges, we see that Yitro's descendants do end up in Israel and do inherit land, and that word of Moses was kept, but we're not sure necessarily if Jethro ever made it to Israel himself. But what we see here is that he's rejecting the land, which is interesting because what happens in next week's Torah portion? So does everyone else. Do you see the foreshadowing here? Next week's Torah portion, which is the most important Torah portion in the Torah, because it was my bar mitzvah portion, Shalach Lecha, is when the spies are sent into Israel, they come back and everyone except for the Levites and Caleb and Joshua rejected as well. But here we have Jethro, the Torah portion before, foreshadowing what's going to happen. Can someone pass the mic back? Eileen?
I don't think just Jethro was rejecting the land so much as pointing out why he wasn't entitled to it.
The Talmud talks about that, but Moses tells him, I know you're worried about that, but we're going to take care of you. You're going to have land just like everybody else. And he still doesn't go.
Then he went along.
Maybe. He may or may not show up later. It's hard to tell from Judges, because Judges just says that his descendants were there, so it's hard to say. You could argue that, but it's hard to say because it just says his descendants were there. I think it's Judges 1:16. But here, he says, I'm not going, and he doesn't go, which is the opposite of Ruth, who is a different convert, who says, I'll go no matter what, even though I also have no tribe. And what happened to her? Her grandson became King David, and they inherited everything. So the question is, if they had a cloud, why did they need Hobab?
Wasn't the cloud leading them, and as they traveled, the cloud was telling them where they go, and they stay here 3 days, and the cloud was not.
Yeah, but they didn't want Hobab to lead. Moses didn't want him to be the leader. He wanted them to come with them and be part of the people of Israel.
Part of the family.
Yeah. And why? Why does Moses care about Israel so much? Why does Moses want to go into Israel even when God tells him you don't need to? Because it's the only place you could fulfill all the mitzvahs. There's all these mitzvahs that they have, but you can't do them until you get to the land. So what Moses is really saying to Jethro is, you want to be a real Jew and do all the mitzvahs, you have to experience the land of Israel. So come with us.
Well, the offer from Moses was purely practical. They just wanted a guide. It wasn't because of the holiness of the land that he was inviting him. It was just to be a guide, and it was just really a financial transaction. They were going to give him land for him being the guide. So there was no holiness on it.
I mean, look, the whole idea of going to Israel is aliyah. It's going up in holiness. And he's saying, no, I don't want that. So, I mean, look, is Jethro's fear, that he's not going to inherit land? Yes. That's definitely part of it, I think. But on a deeper level, it looks like he's going away from the land of Israel. And the words that are used are the exact opposite of the words that are used by the text with Ruth. I'm going to my people and my land, and Ruth says, your people and your land will be my land. So that, there's a little bit of a difference there. But either way, it doesn't really matter to me so much as I want to say this. It looks like Moses is being left by himself. And Jethro is saying, I'm not going to help you. Carol, do we have a mic back on this side? There we are.
Maybe his purpose was not in Israel. There are other parts of the world that God's work need to be done.
Okay.
And in us. So,
yeah.
Moses' work wasn't done in Israel.
The problem with that, though, is the work that's meant to be done in other parts of the land, that's what the non-Jews are supposed to do. And Yitro is now Jewish, so he's supposed to be in Israel. But you could take it either way. What happens next? I have a lot more to get to, so I'm going to try to move on a little bit. What happens next is bizarre, beginning in chapter 11. We have this whole experience with the Jews are leaving Mount Sinai, and they go a little bit away, and then we have this thing with Jethro. And we're only supposed to have, like a 12-day journey to Israel. They don't know yet that they're going to wander for 40 years. They haven't even committed the sin that's going to cause them to wander for 40 years. So they think they're just on the way. And when they get to Israel, they'll be able to eat whatever they want. They've been told it's a land flowing with milk and honey. And they're going to eat whatever they want. The problem is there's no food in the wilderness. And so for 10 to 11 days, they have to live on manna. And the manna tastes like whatever you want it to taste like. But the people now, out of nowhere, are going to start a fight with God about the manna. And this is like going to a food and wine festival in Italy for 10 days and being absolutely apoplectic that the food on the flight to Italy isn't that great. It's like, who cares? Just get there and you could eat whatever the heck you want. I've flown on Alitalia. The food isn't that great. But when you get to Italy, they have some good food. You'll be okay. They're going ballistic here. And it makes no sense. Why are they so angry? Look at chapter 11 now. Who's got a mic? Anyone? All right, chapter 11, verse 1.
All right. The people took to complaining bitterly before the Lord. The Lord heard and was incensed. A fire of the Lord broke out against them, ravaging the outskirts of the camp. The people cried out to Moses. Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. That place was named Taberah because a fire of the Lord had broken out against them.
Yeah, you know what a taverah is today in modern Hebrew? A Molotov cocktail. That's the word for in Hebrew. Taverah here means something that's burning. Okay, so all of a sudden we have, in chapter 11, the people are really angry, and they're so angry that a fire burns out against them, and it consumes certain people in Israel. Whoever was on the edge of the camp, and I'm not saying what edge of the camp means yet. And the people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed, and the fire sank. And so they named the place Burning. What are they complaining about? Okay, verse 4, let's find out.
The riffraff in their midst felt a gluttonous craving. And the Israelites, moreover, wept and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we used to eat free in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Now our gullets are shriveled. There was nothing at all, nothing but this manna to look to.
Okay. If there's a more bizarre verse in the Torah, show it to me. We have this manna, which tastes like anything you want it to taste like. But no matter how hard you conjure up, you cannot get it to taste like cucumbers, melons, leeks, onion, or garlic. And so, now I love garlic. And if there's one thing my wife hates, it's when I eat garlic. It drives her insane. And she says I smell for like a week. So when she goes out of town, it's Garlic City. Yeah. But, no, I don't know if you're someone who just can't, you can't have your, pizza or whatever without some garlic. Is that big a deal that you're going to risk your life and complain to God and risk the wrath of this fire over some melons and leeks and cucumbers? It makes no sense. So what does Rashi say? I don't think I brought it. But what do all of these foods have in common? These are foods that are harmful for mothers who are nursing. Now, I don't know any doctors here who tell you, look, you could eat all the leeks you want, your kids are going to be fine. But this is what they used to think. And there is an image here that the manna is God nursing the Jewish people. And when you're nursing people, there's some foods you don't want the babies to be eating because it's not good for them. And so for that reason, those foods they were not able to conjure up. Now, whether they thought about fried chicken or melon, the food was the same thing. It was the manna, it was the coriander seed, it was the same thing. But just by thinking of it, that was the image that they wanted to create. That any food that you would give to a mother who was nursing, I'm not going to give to you now because I am caring for you the way a mother cares for a baby who's nursing. That's what Rashi says. But the whole thing is bizarre. Why are they so upset about food? Okay, and they go on, and it gets more and more ridiculous. Now, I'm going to show you something. This is where I hope that you're going to be impressed. If you don't love this, I don't know what to tell you. First of all, where are the Jewish people, as now we leave and we start going on these journeys, where are we leaving? What place? Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is the place of holiness. At Mount Sinai, we were happy to eat whatever you had. But now we're moving away from the holy place, from the holy mountain, and we're going out into the wilderness. And as we go out into the wilderness, we're moving away from the holiness. And there's an image of the Jewish people leaving Mount Sinai not so happy, almost like in a mourning state. If you look at the Bechor Shore, by the way, the Midrash, what I told you about a woman who is nursing, I didn't make that up. It's in the Midrash there. You can see in the middle of the page. But the Bechor Shore says this, like mourners, they were mourning like mourners over a deceased, for they were short-spirited and grieving because the Lord desired to bring them into the land, and they would go to war, and they were fearful and lacking in faith because they thought when they left Mount Sinai, they were now going to have to go to Israel, and they were going to have to gird up for war. And they were starting to, this is already foreshadowing what we're going to see next week when they say, we don't want to go there, we don't think we can win that war. That's really scary to us. But is it that, or is it that they lose faith as they move away from Mount Sinai? And as they lose faith, their excitement for going to the land of Israel and for having more expected of them in the land of Israel, doing more mitzvahs, is waning. So think about this. You go to Mount Sinai. These idiots in Louisiana, which is where I'm about to send my daughter, but these idiots in Louisiana, they want to have the 10 Commandments. So put the 10 Commandments. But let me tell you something about the 10 Commandments. Yeah, first of all, you got the wrong version. Right. Second of all, there's a lot more mitzvahs that come with those. You want to honor your parents? Fine. Here's what's going to cost you. You now have to pay for your grandparents' nursing home. You now got to do this. You got to do that. You got to... no. We want the version where you just put it up to show that you're better than non-Christians, but we're not going to actually do it. Especially, like that adultery one. At least not our religious leaders. Right. You heard about that guy? What's that guy? Oh, there's some, or whatever. The Jews get the 10 Commandments and they say, okay, not bad. Honor your mother and father. Shabbos is going to be annoying, but we'll figure it out. I don't usually kill. I don't usually lie in court. These sound good. God says, good, you got those? Let's go into Shabbat. You got to tear your toilet paper on Friday before the sun goes down. You got to cook 3 meals. There's going to be challah. There's going to be havdalah. You're going to need to buy these special candles. Okay, that doesn't sound so bad. Let's get to the Eruv. You're not allowed to carry anything on Shabbos. You got to build a wall around your cities. If it breaks, nobody can move. You can't build a fire. Cold food. What? Okay. Fine. Hang on. There's more. There are these other holidays. Yom Kippur. Can't eat all day. Wait, what? Okay, fine. Keep going. Hold on. Did I tell you about impurity? You're going to have to build these things called mikvahs. So the Jews started 10 commandments, got it. 20 commandments, got it. 300 commandments? 400 commandments? 500 commandments? 613? Hey, sucks. Yeah. Right? You thought it was going to be, all right, holiness is, all right, I honor my parents and one day a week I can't, make a fire. By the time you leave Mount Sinai, what you realize is every single second and every single aspect of your life is this stuff. And there's no URJ yet. Right? There's nothing like that. There's only, and by the way, if you don't do it, we kill you. We throw stones at you until you fall off a cliff. So by the time they left, look what the Bechor Shor says. Mitonanim. They weren't so thrilled anymore. Because they now realized that their life was going to be completely consumed every moment of having to be holy. And they started to say, oy, I don't know about that. And when we get to where we're going, when we get to the land of Israel, there's a whole bunch of more rules. There's all the sacrificial stuff, and there's all the agricultural stuff. And by the way, every single one of us is a farmer, and we've all got, and the corners of my fields, and this and that, and fallow and not fallow, and Shemitah and Yovel. There's a lot of stuff. It's literally every second of my life I have to do this, and if I don't do it, I get killed. Doesn't sound that great. And they're starting to say, I don't know if I'm interested in this.
A question. Are the 613 mitzvot or commandments, or is there a difference?
Same thing. Mitzvah means commandment.
So you're commanded. It's not like a nice thing you could do.
There's no options. There's no options.
Okay.
The only option is if you want to be a Nazirite or not. So if you want to say, there were like 2 guys who said, 613, that's it? That's all you got? All right, I'll do the thing with the hair and the wine. All right, now I want to show you something interesting. I mean, I hope you thought that was interesting, but here, listen to this. What is Yitro famous for? What was his in Yitro? By the way, What happened in Yitro? In Exodus? That's when we got the Ten Commandments. We thought things were good because we got the Ten Commandments. Now we're learning the rest of it. But what was he famous for? What advice did he give Moses? Right. He told Moses, how can you do this all alone? You're one judge for 1.2 million people. You need to appoint other judges. So what did Moses do? He said, you're right. He appointed circuit courts and regional courts and all the different types of courts that there are, and he was the Supreme Court. And he had all these other judges, and he didn't have to judge all the people anymore. Now, hang on one second. I hope that you're going to be... Listen to this. Okay. Everybody's complaining, and they're going crazy over the meat. And Moses says to God, how can you do this for me? Everyone's abandoning me. Nobody wants to do this. They're running away from the manna because it's from you. It's not because of what it tastes like. They can make it taste like whatever they want. You think they wanted cucumbers and leeks so bad? You think the fish restaurants in Egypt were so great? What they were saying was, we're running away from holiness. We're running away from Israel. We're running away from Mount Sinai. We're running away from your weird food that comes from the sky. We're running away from these ideas from God. And I'm alone down here. And look what happens in verse 16. Chapter 11, verse 16. This is unbelievable. Anyone have a microphone? Victor, would you mind? Would you mind reading verse 16?
And Moses said to Korah,
God said to Moses, right? 11:16.
Then the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 of Israel elders, of whom you have experience as elders and officers of the people, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their place with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will draw upon the Spirit that is on you and put it upon them. They shall share the burden of the people with you, and you shall not bear it alone. And said to the people, be ready for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, for you have kept whining before the Lord and saying, if only we had meat to eat. Indeed, we were better off in Egypt. The Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, not 2, not even 5 days, or 10 or 20, but a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils, and becomes loathsome for you have rejected the Lord who's among you, by whining before him and saying, oh, why did we ever leave Egypt?
Okay. Now, we sort of got the pretext to what happened when everyone complained. You know, later on we're going to see that the ringleaders die because by eating so much that it causes them to die, and then they're buried there. But now if you'll come back with me to the beginning of chapter 11. Chapter 11, verse 1. Now, the people were like those who seek pretexts of evil in the ears of God. My translation's a little different because it's better. And God heard, and his wrath flared, and a fire of God burned against them, and it consumed the edge of the camp. Now, the edge of the camp in Hebrew is Ksei HaMachaneh. And the rabbis have a field day with this. Who is killed in the Ksei HaMachaneh? Now, what was Yitro's advice to Moses? We just said it before. To appoint judges, to appoint other leaders to help you. Now we see in this week's Torah portion, Yitro's back. And while Yitro's back, God reminds him to do what Yitro did. Don't take the burden all by yourself. Appoint 70 elders. Right? We just read that in chapter 11. Appoint 70 elders. God's telling Yitro, God's telling Moses the same advice that Yitro told Moses back in Yitro in Exodus, ironically in the same portion that Yitro is also here. You see the connections? So then the rabbis asked the question, why does he need to appoint 70 elders? He already has the leaders that he appointed from Yitro. Where are those guys? Understand the question? So, God, in other words, let me just repeat it so that we're all clear. God's telling Moses in this week's Torah portion, where we meet Yitro again, ironically, out of nowhere, appoint leaders. Okay, well, that's the same advice that Yitro gave him, so there's something going on there. But then the rabbis asked the question, well, wait a minute. Why appoint new leaders? What happened to the old leaders that he appointed the first time Yitro told him to appoint leaders? So Rashi, I didn't bring this Rashi, but if you so in this verse, in 11:1, at the edge of the camp, the word in Hebrew for edge is katseh, which is another word in Hebrew that comes from that, katzin. Katzin means a captain. In modern Hebrew too, in the Israeli army, a katzin is a captain, I think.
I think it's from
Kates, the end, right, also the end, right. Kates means end, katseh means the edge of. We say in Hebrew, mina katseh la katseh, from one edge to the other, from one end to the other. But there's a comment in Rashi that says that in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh says, I didn't bring it on the sheet, even though it's like the most important text I needed for today, but trust me, it's in Rashi. He says, but katsinim shebahem, at the officials among them, uvagdolim, and the greatest among them. Who were the ones that the fire consumed? Who were the ringleaders who said we don't have food? The judges that Moses appointed the first time. Why does he need new leaders now? Because the first ones were killed in this fire. They were the ringleaders. And so now Moses is feeling more alone than ever. Everyone is abandoning him. Yitro doesn't want to go with him. The Jews don't want to eat the food. They're leaving away from Mount Sinai. They're about to wander in the Holy Land, wander in the wilderness, away from the Holy Land. We're foreshadowing the biggest sin in the whole Torah next week. And now, if you're Moses, if you would skip with me to chapter 12, verse 1, but don't look at it. Don't look at it. Don't even look at the first word. It'll ruin everything. But if you're Moses and your leaders just turned on you, who are the people that you could count on? Who are the only people you could count on left that you know are with you? Who's that? More specific. Miriam and Aaron. Miriam and Aaron are the only people you have left. Chapter 12, verse 1. Anyone have it? Ed, chapter 12, verse. The only people you have left on your side are Miriam and Aaron.
When they were in Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. He married a Cushite woman. They said, has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?
They've abandoned him too.
Whoa.
Everybody has abandoned Moses. Even Miriam and Aaron. Chapter 12, verse 1. Is that unbelievable? So what are we saying? Nobody except Moses was up to Torah. Nobody was up for it. It was too much at Mount Sinai. Now, what the people said is, we do want to be betoch b'nei Yisrael. We like the social aspects. I like being a cultural Jew. I like the hub. Yeah. Someone asked me, so I was telling someone yesterday, I gave someone a tour of the hub, He said, you know, we're at 1,700 families right now. So he said, well, when is too big? When do you say, you know, we're too big? I said, you have trouble Friday night getting a seat? I said, I promise you have a seat. I promise you can have your own section. You can have your own section. What are you worried about? 2 days a year, you worried? Even then, we're not even filling the room. What are you worried about? We could have 4 million members. We wouldn't fill it, you know. So, you know, Central Synagogue, they have a cap. Yeah, 2,000 families. There's a 37-year waiting list. You can leave it to your cousins in your will or whatever. And Friday night, it's pretty crowded with tourists. Yeah. You know how many tourists are walking around Pinecrest? You know, they don't just, oh, you know, we're here. Let's drop in. You know, there's no such thing. But walking around Midtown, there's some Jews. You know. So we love being part of B'toch B'nai Yisrael. But everybody's abandoned Moses. There's nobody left. Now, you could ask the question, why are they surprised? Did the Jewish people before this point know that they were going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years? I'm going to show you something now that's going to knock your socks off. Look at the back page. You're gonna have to go back in your Chumash, in your Torah, to see, did I make this up? Is this verse really there? Did I just edit this verse in last week into the Torah? But I promise you this verse has been there for 3,500 years. Look at Exodus chapter 16, verse 35. We knew in Exodus, we've been warned about this already. Look what Exodus says. And the Israelites ate manna 40 years, and until they came to a settled land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. We were warned about this in Exodus, that this was going to happen. God already knew before we internalized the Torah that it would be tough for us. Isn't this unbelievable? That verse has always been there. In Exodus. So here's what I think. What I wanted to show you today was that this generation was not ready for Torah. And they were running away from holiness. Those are the words of Rabbi Ari Khan. They were running away from holiness. And God knew it and said, you're right. You're not up for it. So you're going to wander in the wilderness until you die. And then we'll start over with the next generation that was not born into slavery, but was born inheriting the Torah. And they'll go into the land of Israel. But what's different about the next generation than this generation? This generation was born before the Torah was given. So to them, they grew up thinking you could eat, remember that one verse? You could eat the paschal lamb, the paschal offering, in a state of impurity. Right? They grew up thinking that because the Torah didn't exist. So they grew up thinking that, yeah, the Torah is, the stuff you have to do, but it's pretty flexible. The next generation is going to be born, and from their very moment that they're born, they're going to be taught Torah. And they would grow up and say, why would anyone ever think about eating a sacrifice in impurity? Everyone knows you can't do that. Because that's what they were born with. And so here's what I think. Here's what I think. I heard one guy say, this is like I think a nice way of talking about Reform Judaism. That following all of the mitzvahs. So I once had this teacher in 8th grade, and he gave us a choice what grade we wanted. He said, if you want an A, here's all the things you need to do. You got to do A, B, C, and D. If you want a B, just do A, B, and C. If you want a C, just do A and B. If you want a D, just do A. If you want an F, don't do any of them. You pick your grade. So I took C, and I said, no problem. No, I don't. I actually did really well in that class. I think it's the only class I got an A in that year. But that's kind of how the Torah is. You do what you want to do, and you do as much as you think you can, and you do the best that you can, and it's an ideal. Doing all of the mitzvahs is an ideal. And you do what you think makes sense for you. And then God judges you as you. Okay. No, we're not going to throw stones at you until you fall off a cliff and die, like they do in the Torah. So, what I think we see is from the generation who inherited the Torah at Mount Sinai to their kids. From one generation to the next generation, we see, with regard to Torah, growth. The next generation learns from the previous generation and says, okay, here's what they did, here's how we're going to do it a little bit better. And so on, and so on, and so on. And so I think what our goals are to try to inherit Torah from the people who came before us and refine it and pass it on and hope our kids refine it even more. But one last point. Going back now to the very beginning. If you're in it just for B'toch B'nai Yisrael, if you're in it just to be part of the Jewish people, for the social component, for the cultural component, for the kugel, right, and the locks, then probably somewhere inside of you, you're running away from the holiness. And the reason you're running away from the holiness is because you can't get yourself in your mind to commit to the fact that being holy isn't just putting the 10 Commandments in a classroom and saying that I'm a wonderful person. That's literally doing nothing. I'm really religious and I want the 10 Commandments in every classroom. That's the equivalent of doing nothing. But if you're going to say, I'm going to make Torah study part of my life, I'm going to make Shabbat part of my life, Judaism is about what are you going to do? You can't just think it. You got to do it. And at Mount Sinai, the Jews said, wow, this God expects a lot from us. And so I learned this from one of our more savvy business members of our congregation. He told me, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And so you can walk around and say, I'm really religious because I vote for this guy. Or I'm really religious because, I support the 10 Commandments in schools. That's literally doing nothing. You're religious because you're going towards the holiness and not away from holiness. And I fear that people who say I'm a cultural Jew, it's a cop-out because they're not willing to have the conversation with themselves. What am I willing to do to be Jewish and to bring holiness into my life? That's Bahalotecha. This generation couldn't handle it. But their kids did a really good job with it. And that's what we're trying to do here. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. To me, a cultural Jew is Jews who are members here. Love being Jewish. But I never ever do anything ever. No commitment. No commitment. Well, you're a practicing Jew, just like me. In my opinion, but I mean, we can come up with different ways to define it. Okay, fair enough.
I'm not running away from the big part.
You're here.
Next Saturday, you're going to Colorado.
I'm actually in Alaska next time.
Beautiful.
Right. We're going on an Alaskan cruise.
Oh, the Inside Passage.
Yeah. I've never been.
We did it for my dad's 70th birthday.
Yeah. 16 of us, so family reunion.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a great way to go.
Yeah.
Great trip.
I'm super excited.
Seattle or
All right. Oh, you're going for until then? All right. Wow. That's awesome. You going to any concert?
Yeah, of course.
You did?
Yeah, we're going to Nesca Trucks and Rocks.
Red Rocks is fun.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, keep in touch with me. All right.
Miriam Novak, Israel's ambassador.
We're going to Fish Labor Day if you want to come.
Oh, wow. I might.
Miriam Novak, Israel's ambassador. I don't know if you saw it. Gave an amazing speech
Israel's ambassador.
at the UN this week. 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's worth your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
We were in Alaska last summer. You're flying into Vancouver or into Seattle? Vancouver is better.
Well, we're going to Seattle.
It's a long flight. Seattle's better because you can get in there easier from Miami.
Really? Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, and you probably
I've
do.
never been to Seattle either, so I'll get to see it.
It's a neat town.
Yeah. We go to the fish market.
Yeah, see them throw a fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two thoughts. One about the Ten Commandments in Louisiana. The problem that I see is that the Jewish view of the Ten Commandments is not the only view. You've got the Islam and you've got Christian.
Right.
So, I mean, so what they
We got
actually...
the original, though.
But it's symbolic, and it's not necessarily. I agree with you. Not a big deal. Not something to waste your political capital on. The other thing, we were at the Holocaust Institute the last 2 days, and they're doing something that you probably should be aware of. They're affiliating with the Holocaust Memorial. The Holocaust Memorial has got funding to build classrooms. So now
The one in Miami Beach?
Miami Beach.
Oh, okay.
So the Miriam Klein Kasanoff is now affiliating her Holocaust Institute with the Holocaust Memorial.
That's great.
And it's being endorsed by all the stakeholders.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. And probably the woman who's being groomed to take over for Miriam is now the head of the Holocaust Memorial.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a young
I
woman
know her.
with a PhD.
She used to work. I knew her because she worked for the ADL.
She's very good.
Sherry something.
Sherry
Tzvi.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the one I was introduced
Something
to.
Tzvi. You mean as the CEO?
I think so. I'm not sure. It has not been committed to writing.
Okay.
They're working on the document because it involves the school board, the University of Miami, the Holocaust Memorial, the Holocaust Institute, and so they have to come up with some sort of document.
Yeah, okay, I know her. I know her.
But that's the future, and it could be a powerful part of the community.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love the Holocaust Memorial. They're great stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We just got a new refrigerator from LG.
Okay.
And in setting it up, it has a Sabbath program.
I love that.
I never heard of such a thing. The Japanese are putting it in.
Oh, wow. Usually you have to unscrew the light on Shabbos.
Whatever it is, but it takes care of it if you press it over. We're trying to figure out what it does and what it doesn't do, but that's the most amazing thing.
That's very cool.
It is really. I mean, here's this giant company. Japan said, we got to put this in. That's good.
I love that. I love that. It's about time. Sure. you have Moses, that's like a good thing, you know.
I mean, because one thing that
And they also had these other 70 teachers who he
the
endowed.
new appointees.
God took some of Moses' strength and gave it to them, so now they had the best teachers for the new generation.
Is there anything in the Torah that tells what happens when these new generations sort of sees their parents not doing what they were supposed to do? Is there any judgment as to that when you grow to realize that?
Well, I mean, their whole childhood is wandering in the wilderness. They were never supposed to have to live in the wilderness, and now they have to live in this bizarre place
Because
for 40 years, or whatever year they're born, eating food from the sky. At some point, they probably had to ask the question, why don't we just go? It's right there. What's the holdup? And they would say, we can't because of what happened. So,
I have a point.
I wanted to wish you well on your trip.
oh, thank you very much.
We
Thank
went
you.
to Alaska first time way back in 20 years ago, and it was like life changing.
Really?
And to this day, I hold my Alaska license, and I returned so many times.
Really?
They like every little nook,
You know,
and you're up for a treat.
You know, I've never even occurred to me to go there. My wife and kids really wanted to go there. Okay, so we're going there. And now, it seems like everyone's been there already. I'm like the last one to get there. I didn't think so many people went to Alaska.
When you're there, the perspective of the work of like our range of reference are completely different there than here. And like you're really at the top of the world, everything's below you.
I'm super
And
excited.
like the rules of nature completely don't follow, like say you stay in Idaho Day and things like that.
I'm excited because we've been on a lot of cruises, but they're all the Caribbean. And, you know, if you don't need